Good morning. Wonderful. So first a quick show of hands. I know you've had your clapping right now and you're all warmed up. But show of hands, how many of you work for startups or have founded your own startup? Show of hands. Okay, a few people. Simpler question, how many of you are engineers? All right, that's a little more encouraging. And slightly different question. How many of you find the property search experience, anywhere in the world by the way, there's nothing to do with Singapore, property search experience stress-free, transparent, how many of you find that to have been your experience? Renting, buying, selling, doesn't really matter. Stress-free, transparent, really pleasant. Wow, you live in a great place, I gotta have a chat with you. And you too, huh? So this is the world of proptech, this is the world that PropertyGuru lives in. In my experience in technology, technology is most effective when it's solving a real problem, when it's actually displacing incumbent solutions which are opaque, which create information asymmetry, as they say. And so it's all about transparency and efficiency. And that is really the world and the opportunity that lies there within proptech. So for those of you thinking of doing startups, we'd encourage you to look at this space. There's plenty of stuff to do. There are lots of problems to solve. None of them are easy. All stuff that appeals to good engineers. So just a quick plug on PropertyGuru. Today, PropertyGuru is Southeast Asia's largest property technology company. We operate in 5 markets. We serve about 25 million property seekers every month. At the core of our business, we have a team of 150 engineers, product designers, experienced designers, data scientists who are transforming our company and our culture and lifting our technology experience. So this is PropertyGuru today. Now what is not visible on this slide is we also run the most widely used sales process automation software for developers. Simply put, if you're a property developer and you're launching a new project, you need software to actually help you manage your sales channels like a CRM, distribute your sales collateral, take real-time bookings, things which are sort of very standard in spaces like travel and hospitality, not at all common actually in real estate even today. We're still talking about physical ledgers, no ERP or accounting software even in many very large multi-billion-dollar organizations. So that's the reality of real estate, and actually this unfortunately is the reality globally. So it is a sector which has lagged pretty much every other sector when it comes to technology disruption. And one of the reasons I was drawn to it as well, frankly. Now, that's where we are today, but what I thought I'd share today is talk about our journey. And our journey is, this year PropertyGuru turns 12. We started right here in Singapore. And you know, it's a story which has multiple phases and one really, really important pivot. A pivot from being a startup to a scale-up, and we'll talk a little bit about what that involves. And for those of you involved in a startup company or a privately held company at least that's going through growth, you might be able to identify certain elements of this. But having reached a certain size, I was sharing this earlier with Silva, I think it's important that we tell stories of companies from this part of the world and the journeys we are going through in transforming ourselves. Learn from each other, and particularly for audiences filled with engineers, it's critical you understand what it takes to actually transform. And spoiler alert, it's not the technology. The core element is culture. It is not something that's nice to have. It's not warm and fuzzy. It is the most tangible business driver that I have experienced in my career and the sole factor that has transformed our company. But this all happened much later. PropertyGuru started in a small shop house in Chinatown, here in Singapore. It started in 2007 in a pre-iPhone era. No app developers, no Uber drivers. That's the era in which we started. One of the very first few digital companies in this part of the world. No venture capital ecosystem at all. Not a single venture capitalist existed in Singapore at the time. It was started by 2 founders who came from Europe and experienced a property discovery experience, like most of you except a couple of you, that was full of friction, completely opaque. Every weekend there was a 20 to 30 page property classified supplement that would come in the Straits Times, 20 to 30 pages. Each advertisement was a few lines of text. Very few of them even had an image. That is how you discovered property at the time, right? And they saw that the biggest thing they could do was to get started in injecting a lot more transparency into this space. So they got started. The very first office was a tiny one, like every startup. Singapore, there aren't that many garages, so you start in shop houses. But this is where our startup started. And they got cracking in Singapore and started looking at how can you inject more transparency. So when it launched in 2007, it was the first property classified site in Southeast Asia, right? It also was the first platform that brought online floor plans, the first map search, and yes, the first mobile app, as that became a part of the reality. Over the first several years, the company scaled rapidly through really managing both sides. You think about a property marketplace, it's a two-sided marketplace. You have consumers, people like you who are coming to find a property, and then you have sellers on the other side. In our case, always an agent or a developer. We don't allow C2C sales, and we can talk about that if you're interested. But when we started, agents and developers on one side, consumers on the other side. And like any good two-sided marketplace, the key to success is on the supply side. So they focused on the agents and the developers, driving them from offline to online. That was the experience. And they injected a lot of transparency for the consumers along the way. No longer did you have to wait for those 20-page supplements. And by the way, the 20-page became like 10-page pretty quick. Unfortunately, many, many years later, we still get something that looks like a 10-page supplement here in Singapore. So that journey continues. Very successful in Singapore. So obviously, like any well-run startup, at this point, by the way, profitable as well. Revenue is growing 50% year on year, doing extremely well by every dimension. No venture capital money still, raising money from various people. So it's not bootstrapped, but just trying to sort of cobble together money, finding strategic investors from other parts of the world. We've reached 2011. 4 years in, you survived. You survived the first few years where most startups die. They reached 2011, and obviously we've been successful in Singapore. Let's take the same idea to every other market, because at this point, there's still only one other property classified site that was in Malaysia. No other market had anything. And so very rapidly, rah-rah, full of energy, entered 3 markets in 3 months: Malaysia, Indonesia, and Thailand. And in the subsequent 2 years, hired 200 gurus. Our employees are called gurus. So hired 200 gurus. The following 1 year, lost all those 200 gurus. Terrible, terrible culture inside the company. The team that has been successful in serving Singapore so successfully is now struggling. It's trying to understand how to solve for Indonesian property seekers, Thai property seekers, Malaysian agents. There might be similarities, but there is a reason that there are no global property sites. The largest property player in the US does not exist in Canada. The largest property site in Australia does not exist in New Zealand. Property is hyper-local. There are no Googles or Amazons or Netflix equivalents. The most dynamic property sites do not come from the United States. There are lots of anomalies to this sector vis-a-vis any other digital sector that I'm aware of. So we are struggling at this point. Growth rate has seriously plateaued off. 50 became 20, 20 became 10. 10% revenue growth for, let's say, a mid-stage or early-stage technology company, you might as well be contracting at this point. You're not attracting any serious talent. It was time for a change. What the founders then did is something which most founders struggle to do. They raised Series C funding successfully because they still had a good core engine. They understood the unit economics of their business. The technology was passable. But along with the investors, they said it is time for that pivot. And having run the company for the first 8 years at this point, till 2015, they said it's time to bring in someone else. At this point, they reached out to me. I had, for the last 6 years at this point, been running, I was hired to set up the LinkedIn business in Asia. When I joined LinkedIn, we were smaller than PropertyGuru. We were 200 people, 10 people in London, me in Bombay, and everyone else in the US. No Canada, no Australia, no Western Europe, no nothing. We grew the business over those 6.5 years, and the Asia business was largely given to me and a few others to build and scale. And we had a great time building a phenomenal culture, a phenomenal business. Obviously, over that time, we went from a company that some people were aware of to most people starting to use. But I think the thing that I was proudest of was the quality and depth of the team and the culture within the organization. And we talk about it as a competitive differentiator. Very often I'd be on a stage like this talking about it. One of the founders was a classmate of mine at business school, founders of PropertyGuru. He ended up reaching out to me and saying, listen, we're going through this challenge. What do you think about it? He's a buddy, so I gave him some advice. We sat down, we had a couple of beers, we had a good conversation about it. What I didn't realize is he was trying to recruit me. And over time, we had these conversations. I ended up joining the company. I saw the potential. Also, at that stage of my career, this is 3.5 years ago, 4 years ago, I felt I was ready for the next challenge. Could we build a genuinely good technology culture right here in Southeast Asia? A place that good engineers, data scientists, experienced designers would want to come and work at. A place where their end product, their work product, would be visible to themselves, to their loved ones, something that sort of satisfies another part of the human ego, if you like. So we went through this period of transformation. And it started like anywhere else, attract other people to the cause, talk about what we're trying to build here, talk about the transformation. We focused a lot on 3 aspects in particular. Bringing in leadership with a lot of scar tissue. I refer to it as scar tissue, which means you have had a lot of experience of success and your fair share experience of failure. When I look you in the eyes, I don't see someone who's beaten by it, but someone who has been shaped by it, molded by it, and is bringing that to the table so that we don't make the same mistakes as a company. Experience from across the region, across the globe. That's what we brought in. That was priority 1. The second thing was focus. Like any good entrepreneurial company, we had tried and tested everything. I came into the company and I found literally hundreds of projects mid-flight. Good ideas, for themselves, but no way that you had enough capacity to do all of it, and it wasn't clear that all of them were equally important. Our focus in 2016, the first year that I came in, was just ruthless prioritization and shutting things down. Shutting down project after project. Repurposing those teams towards other projects. Lo and behold, we found growth. Teams started delivering projects. The culture began to shift. Any team, whether it's engineering or sales, HR or finance, doesn't really matter. People like a sense of accomplishment. No one likes to feel like projects are all half-baked. It's an important starting point. Before you can even talk about the product being fantastic, the product needs to be live. That's sort of the first level of expectation. And trust me, if you are in a startup company, it starts reaching this mid-stage, 7, 8 years in, this will be a problem. Because what made you successful for those first 7 or 8 years becomes your biggest weakness. You cannot be scrappy. You need structure. Everything cannot be treated like a family. You have to be a little bit more ruthless. Doesn't mean you have to be mean about it. Doesn't mean you have to be all big corporate about it. But that's the fallacy. People believe it's binary. Either you become this massive, behemoth, corporate bureaucracy, or you're scrappy and everyone's sort of joining together and having lunch at the kopitiam. It's nonsense. There's a whole spectrum in between. Most of the successful companies are somewhere in between. And so we started this transformation. Another big thing we started doing is a focus on technology. Technology of our products that were visible to consumers and customers, but technology within the organization. Automation, mapping internal processes, automating them. A lot of people had terribly manual jobs. Now, this was what we were doing, and some of these photographs were taken. These are all actual employees. This is taken in our office. The folks in the top picture are our current executive team. So, very multicultural. We have 30 nationalities across the organization. We are multicultural. We started as a Singaporean startup, proudly homegrown Singaporean startup. Today, we're an Asian multinational technology company. That's how we define ourselves. But this journey, that's the end state. During that period, though, the transition from a startup CEO to a scale-up CEO is best related in the past tense. It is not a fun experience to go through. Pretty much every decision you question. You are alone. However close you bring your team to you, you are alone. Your investors, your team, they all look to you for direction. And for those of you who are leading your teams, or for those of you who aspire to lead organizations, ask yourself that question before you step in. It is lonely. Your one down is one down. In that environment, there will be periods of time where you have conviction on what you're doing, but you will see no results for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. And yet you have to stay true to it. Because cultural change is a multi-year thing. When I committed to our board at the time, I said it's going to take us the best part of 2 years. I'm taking essentially an online media company. It feels a little bit like Yahoo, MSN, AOL. And we're going to convert it into a technology marketplace. This is a big pivot. We're going to have to take it from being advertisers being our most important customer to the end consumer being the most important customer. This is not just words. It's how you make financial decisions. It's how you price your products. It's how you design your page. It's how you engineer your code. All of that is oriented now towards the other side of the marketplace. This is a big switch. No data science when I came in. No experienced design team. Was the team clueless? No. There are lots of organizations that have excellent technology generalists, marketing generalists, sales generalists, and that is how you build a startup. When you start reaching scale up, if you don't want to look like that baby all the time, you need to find specialists. In the third year of our transition, 2018, we started seeing the first green shoots, the first signs of success. Our culture had transformed. When we looked at the scoreboard, look at data for your decisions, in the preceding 3 years, we had grown our revenues by 25% year on year. We had re-achieved hypergrowth. We had gone back into hypergrowth. This year, we will grow our revenues by 50%. So of our larger and larger revenue base, we're accelerating 12 years in. So the transformation had started to show the first green shoots last year. But the most important thing from my perspective, talent attrition or talent retention, put in a more positive way, had improved by 30%. So 30% fewer people were leaving us every year. It's impossible to build a culture if you have a revolving door. You spend all your time recruiting. Some of the big names, some of the unicorns, even decacorns in the world, and particularly in Asia, we gather together, and sometimes the CEOs, we trade notes. They have 50, 60% attrition in some of their divisions. 60% attrition, and you have 1,000 employees. You're recruiting all the time. You're just a permanent recruitment factory. There is no way you can build culture. It's not a surprise that the product starts to suffer. It's not a surprise that you make mistakes with customers or with consumer experience. It's easy to criticize from the outside. When you're in the inside, it sometimes is difficult and frustrating to figure out how you fix this. When we got to 2018, we had our technology well up. Data science had run a bunch of experiments. We had a good team. Data standardization, data governance was in place. Product team was excellent. A really good CTO on board. And then we said, okay, now we need to start going after some of those really big problems we've had. The day I joined PropertyGuru and I shared it with people, there were two things that people in Singapore said to me. First, thank you. I found my home on PropertyGuru. And second, can you please do something about those photos on your site? They're absolute crap. I tended to agree. But you go into the company, you begin to realize what's the problem. Success is your biggest challenge. Today we have 15 million images uploaded to our site every month. We had moderators, even when I came in. They just could not catch up to the success. As the team became more successful at acquiring consumers, acquiring agents, acquiring listings, we got a lot more content. And when you move people from offline to online, by the way, it's not bad actors. They bring offline behavior online. Think about a print classified for a property ad, if any of you have seen it. It looks exactly like that. There's a picture of an agent in front of it. There's a phone number. There's a call to action. They brought the same behavior online. So they did the first thing. They went offline to online. We didn't tell them to change the behavior. So now we train agents maybe twice a week in each of our offices, and we're trying to make some of these behaviors change. But that's sort of more the carrot approach. Incentives, try to figure out how to encourage good behavior, use some data for those data-oriented customers, talk about if you do this, you will get more leads, you'll get more conversions, so you'll make more money, all of that. Come 2018, we said, okay, it's time to bring technology. If we're a technology company, let's use technology. Technology had also reached that place where it was affordable enough for a mid-sized company like us to access, and scalable enough to fix problems like this. So we turned to machine learning. Train the machine to recognize good images versus bad. But then comes the business pivot, and this becomes pretty critical. Instead of saying this is how we are going to moderate our images, which is what we're trying to do, by the way, we called it the Quality Photos Guide, flipped it on its head and said, this is a machine learning-based training platform for agents. As an agent, when you upload an image, we use that second when you upload the image as a training experience. If you did something wrong. If you did something wrong, you will get feedback as what specifically is wrong in that image. We'll show you ways in which you can improve it and allow you to make those changes. We also did this over 12 to 15 months. A good technology company should just flip the switch, right? Well, not if you want to take your customers along with you. If I was looking to disintermediate them, maybe. But we're not. We want them to be part of our experience. So we started training them, let's say late 2017 and all the way through 2018. The permanent question was, Hari, when are you going to turn them off? We took it from having 80% of our listings having bad images like this, all the way down to 20% of our listings having bad images. We changed the quality score. It actually became very hard for you to find these bad images. You had to scroll quite a bit down. But the thing with real estate is people will scroll all the way down because you're looking for a home. You will look for as many pages and as many listings as necessary to meet your budget, your location, and other criteria. Earlier this month, actually, we finally played out the final phase of this and played out the nuclear option. Every single image that violated this was taken off the site. So today, if you go into PropertyGuru, the browsing experience looks like this. Something that all of us would expect from a property portal anywhere. Nothing phenomenally remarkable, you might say. We have incentivized higher quality images. We have created better positioned products so agents can talk about what's so unique about it. Premium listing products, not just ways to make money for us, but to actually help agents position premium listings for customers. Hot listings, not expensive ones, right? But technology is at the back of this. Every day, even today, I'll bet you there are agents still trying to put up bad images. They can't anymore. The quality score, which was driven through artificial intelligence, the training program driven by machine learning, but the end experience driven with the customer in mind. Technology solving a real problem, but taking people along for the ride. This is something I'd say our sector historically has not always done a great job at. We just assumed, okay, everyone's an engineer, we're going to pivot. You lose most of the world when you do it that way. Never lose sight of your customer. So now we're in 2019, 2018, we have fixed all these big problems, we got a great team. We also have an ambitious team. When you have an ambitious team, you need to dream big things, you need to go after big problems, you need to start thinking about changing the world. I started by saying there's a lot of opacity, there's a lack of trust. We decided that our mission will be to become the trust platform for property. What does this mean? We're on this journey, but when we are done with it, you will come to PropertyGuru and trust whatever information is on it to identify the right listings, the right home loans, the right agents, the right developers, the right condos. We'll tell you what's good or bad for you, because there is no good or bad agent. There's a good agent for you, and there's a good agent for me, and that might be different people. So we're going to go through this journey. So we said, let's look at a couple of big problems. Let me take you to Malaysia. Malaysia, in 2018, there was a 60% rejection of home loans applications. 60%. 6 out of 10 applications are rejected. A horrible experience for consumers. There's also $72 billion, $7 billion Sing dollars of constructed, ready-to-occupy residential real estate that is unsold. So we have a supply-demand dislocation. People can't get home loans, houses can't get sold. Everyone is losing. Banks are processing 10 applications and able to give loans to only 4 people. Banks are losing. Everyone is losing money in this experience. So we said, we are consumer-centric, let's focus on the consumer. This solution in Malaysia allows consumers to go onto our platform, PropertyGuru Malaysia, upload their IC, their identity card, and a few other data points, and we will tell them what their credit worthiness is. Again, you may say not remarkable. It's the first of its kind in that market. They've never had a solution of this kind. So now for the first time, people know what they can afford. Based on that, we target only those listings that they can actually acquire. Now, you can always go and dream of something bigger, but if you can only afford a ringgit house, we'll give you something in that range. You can browse for the 5 million ringgit home, but good luck getting a loan for that. Right? So the idea is we're beginning to train on this side, not just about giving a solution, but actually understanding what the unique case is, using fintech in this case, because we have deep integrations into the banks. This is not just about a tool that stands by itself. We partner directly into the banks. The language we're using there is, are you pre-approved? As a Malaysian, the first question before you start your search, are you pre-approved? Don't even start your search until you know your affordability. And these 3 banks will tell you you're pre-approved for a loan. You can move faster. You can actually get that home you want. More transparency into the process, more efficiency, technology. We then started thinking, okay, these are solving real problems through slightly more legacy applications. How about reimagining the future of discovery? Today, 85% of the traffic that comes to PropertyGuru is organic. We are very, very good at high quality content, very good at search engine optimization. We don't have to spend that much to acquire content. That drives profitability. It also makes it bloody hard for anyone to displace us. But what about the future? How are people going to discover content? Our hypothesis is companies like Amazon and Google, Alibaba, and perhaps some of your companies are going to change the consumer expectation. When they look for products, when they look for information, they're going to use virtual assistants and they're going to use visual search. What about property? Not a single site in the world has got a visual search product at scale. They've got a couple of hackathon ideas, but nothing that was meant to scale, nothing that was production ready. In January of this year in Singapore, we launched a product built in Singapore and Thailand that is the world's first. It uses a lightweight neural network on the iPhone. Currently it's in private beta, iPhone only in Singapore. It's a visual search product. Maybe I thought I'd show you a quick little video on PropertyGuru Lens. So now we have a team that wants to build world's first products. That's their expectation and ambition within the culture of our organization. But not just for gimmicks, to actually solve real problems. To understand what the need is in each of our markets and try and find the best technology solutions to it. Some of them will be visible to the consumer, like Lens. A lot of it will be in the enterprise space as we innovate for property developers and agents to make their processes more efficient, transparent, to help you in the end, of course, but that's of a B to B to C solution. Consumer benefiting from an agent and developer interaction that is now transparent and efficient. This is going to unlock a lot more efficiency, but also hopefully help with pricing the products right. In this case, homes, the single largest asset class in the world, the most expensive thing any of you will ever own. Technology going after a solution that is in a heavily regulated space and trying to disrupt all of this is complicated. You have a massive regulatory drag. Even in Singapore, which is such a world leader in so many ways, the Civil Act requires that conveyance documents are physical. which means if you want to buy a home, there has to be a printed document at one stage of the process. We cannot digitize it all the way through. That's a legal requirement. These are examples of regulatory drag. Technology already has solutions for this, and there are hundreds of other examples like this. How do we as technologists think about solving it? That's what we are now faced with. Show of hands, how many people recognize the 3 characters on the screen? Oh boy, you guys need to geek up a little bit more. So I am a kid of the 1970s and 80s, so I did grow up with Kit, HAL, and R2-D2. That was my youth. That was science fiction. My adult life has autonomous cars, robots, and AI-driven virtual assistants as a part of my home. I don't own an autonomous car, but I have the other 2. So where do we go from here? Not just for us as Property Guru, but for all of you as technologists. And I think for me, as I think about all the disruption that's happened, there's been a lot of debate about some of the digital solutions, what they've done to democracy, what they've done to data privacy, etc. But in a world of 5G, in a world of facial recognition at mass scale, the question for us as engineers, as technologists, is going to be not can we do it, but should we do it? So as you think of your solutions, keep this at the back of your mind. The very best technologists in my mind over the next decade will be responsible technologists. Thank you. So I believe we have a little bit of time for any questions in case you guys had any. Happy to take them. Sure. Do you need a mic or I'm not sure.
Sorry, just a question on what you mentioned earlier about the markets being hyperlocal. So what exactly is the difference between one market and the other?
So the market dynamics, the actual structure varies. So I'll give you a couple of examples. In Singapore, last night I was with our property developers. We do a media dinner kind of thing. The reality is none of those developers have sales teams, as an example. They outsource their entire sales to agencies. So if you live in Singapore, even if you're buying a new project that's under construction, you're going to go through an agency. That's the reality of it. You look at it in Thailand, the consumers and the developers prefer to directly deal with each other. So resale rentals are a little different. You do have agencies. But for primary sales, as we call it, and by the way, in Southeast Asia, a lion's share of the value is primary sales. Now again, that's what makes us unique. If you look at Australia, you look at Western Europe, you look at North America, it's largely resale and rental. So a lot of the solutions are optimized for that. There are also excellent data, there's excellent feeds for solutions to be built on. We have none of that. So when you start looking at the market dynamics as well as the technology readiness, there's a lot of opacity, a lot of lack of clarity on how things work. The other thing is elements like in Malaysia, where access to financing is different. In Singapore, everyone is pretty well educated, but also pretty early in the process, even an agent will tell you to figure out what your loan to value ratio is, how much can you actually get as a home loan, and therefore use that as a filter to figure out the homes you should be looking at in a purchase. In Malaysia, that's not the case. In fact, consumers are not educated to look at it. Agents definitely don't ask that question. And so that's why you have 60% home loan rejections and a whole lot of unsold homes. So these are some of the structural issues. There are lots more like this. In the other example I'll give you is just around economics. In Singapore, the agent has, the successful agents are pretty wealthy. Some of the most successful agents spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on Property Guru every year, and they drive Lamborghinis, right? So they're not hurting. But and therefore, agents are able to afford a fair deal of spend. So when we think about pricing our products, there's a certain way which we can exercise yield extraction. When you think about it in Indonesia, very different. Even the successful agents get money in a bursty fashion, and they are not necessarily looking for digital solutions. So in Vietnam, which is an idea we're trying to think of potentially bringing to Indonesia, we have taken our products and made them more bite-sized. You can buy in shorter periods, not annual subscriptions, but 2 months, 3 months. But what's the practical issue with this? You need a sales force then to support this. It is not self-serve. This is not a self-serve world. So then you need a sales force and a process to know that I sold you something this week and I need to come back next Friday and sell you the upgrade or the renewal. So the discipline within the organization, there's a lot more stress put on it. So these are some of the examples of the property sector being very different. In the US, the listings on Zillow, etc. are free. But the agent pays to acquire leads. It's the buyer side agent who acquires. Versus in Europe and in Southeast Asia, the seller pays to advertise. So there are market dynamics also which are very, very different. Yeah.
A responsibility in a technology organization. I'm curious, day to day, month to month, what is PropertyGuru doing to achieve this, empower people to be this way, expand on these things?
So we looked at agents. So I've come from two different sectors prior to this. One was online travel, the second was recruiters. Online travel completely disintermediated conventional travel agents, right? So the travel agents were made obsolete. None of us go there anymore. Now, on one hand, fantastic, great for us as consumers, much more transparent, we aren't getting screwed. We pick what we want, what we can afford, when we want to go. Great. What about those people who got left behind? The travel agents. What about upskilling them? Nothing. No discussion ever came from the technology sector about what to do with them. And I was part of that, right? Then I come to LinkedIn and we came to recruiters. Similar kind of thing, but a little different, where some recruiters were made obsolete because their only value was that black book, access to people like you. Other recruiters actually moved up the value chain. They said, okay, that's been commoditized by people like LinkedIn, but how about I drive relationships? So for instance, on my LinkedIn profile, you'll see a bunch of stuff about me. You won't know that I got 2 kids, that I have no interest in jobs in North America or anything else. I'm not going to put that. I'm not going to publicize it. But if you're a good recruiter, you'll know this. So these are examples of which we looked at. So when I looked at property, I believe it'll be more akin to the recruitment space. We won't completely disintermediate. I think there'll be much fewer agents and they will be higher value agents. They will focus on certain either sectors, either government housing, so HDB in Singapore versus landed property versus condominiums or whatever, or certain districts or certain cities in other countries. That's how they look at it. So what we started doing is we have this framework we call the 3I framework. The first I stands for inform. You need to tell people that disruption is coming. They might get it, but most often they haven't got the memo. So what we do is twice a year we have a convention here in Singapore. Singapore is the first place in our geos where this disruption is going to come. We had Minister Chan Chun Singh, who was the head of the NTUC, come up on stage and talk to the agents and tell them you will be obsolete in 2 years. Nothing to do with PropertyGuru. Could be PropertyGuru, could be someone else. Singaporeans don't want you. So how are you going to talk about it? And so inform. First, the memo. I think that's actually pretty important. Tech companies can play a role in this. You can't just assume surely they get it. They clearly don't. Otherwise they won't be obsolete. Right? So I think that's the first step. The second one is we actually looked at inspiring those who are willing to learn. So we say upskilling the willing. So essentially we have partnered again with NTUC. They got this thing called Learning Hub where we have a digital enablement program. So for agents who want to understand how to work in the digital age, it's not just about PropertyGuru. We teach them about Google, search engine optimization, social media advertising, advertising on WeChat, etc. All of that. Our company helped facilitate and pull together this program. And obviously we talk about PropertyGuru and listings and how to think about it, CRMs. So this is, if you are willing, we will play a part in upskilling you and getting you ready for technology age, making you equipped for it. And the third one we have not done as much. I tried partnering a little bit with Airbnb. It didn't really work out. The third I is to basically introduce them to other potential professions where their skills could be useful. So one, and I'll be honest to say we haven't made as much progress on this side, but with Airbnb we were talking about the fact that if you have knowledge about a particular neighborhood that's so good, you could be a virtual host. So when someone's checking in, you could give them much more awareness than the average host, for sure. So we just couldn't figure out how to make it all work with Airbnb, but that's an example. So I think for technologists thinking about who you're impacting, make sure they get the memo, play a role in helping them get ready for the world you are creating. And then if they aren't, that third IIC is slightly more optional, but definitely a bigger tech company should be doing this. Give them other options that their skills could be useful on. But the risk is societal upheaval and other ramifications which will impact you as well. So I think as a responsible technologist, that's the way we are approaching it. They're sort of signaling at me and getting ready to throw stuff at me, so I'm guessing my time's up here, guys. But thank you very much, and as you guys evolve as technologists, I hope you all sort of think about being responsible technologists. Thank you.